Home team fans cheering for the opposing players now. Oh man, okay, SMH. But good win, fellas. On to the next one.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. Today's show is also brought to you by Joshua K, our Patreon sponsor of the day. And if you want to be a Patreon sponsor, you can get a shout out on the show like Josh just did. Head to patreon.com/redrock_bball. My name is Josh Lloyd, as I mentioned. Well, no, I didn't mention. I'll mention it now. My name is Josh Lloyd, and you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. And before we get stuck into everything, another quick shout out to Charles Oakley, who, again, not a real name, was a sponsor of yesterday's show via Patreon, but he also sent me a fantastic Christmas gift. So I do thank Mr. Oakley extraordinarily muchly. If you are watching the video now, you can see that jersey hanging proudly behind me. It is a Karis LeVert Brooklyn jersey, so thank you, Charles, for sending me that jersey. Really, obviously not needed, but really do appreciate it. And Charles has been one of the great supporters of this podcast over the years, and do really appreciate that gift. And I got it hanging proudly behind me for today's episode. Well, on today's episode, what we're going to be doing is, same as always, you know what it is, daily awards, reviewing the 7 games from Wednesday, and then getting stuck into an 8-game Thursday, which is a very weird scenario in the NBA to have 8 games on a Thursday. So
let's get to it.
I also had a couple of people asking me yesterday, how come you're not doing the let's get to it noise anymore? Did I forget it yesterday? Maybe I did. I didn't mean to, but there it is. Yeah, definitely it's not being retired just at this point. It is still there, but maybe I did forget it yesterday. Let's talk monstrous line of the night.
Kevin!
Yep. Kevin Durant. 30 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 3 blocks, 3 3-pointers. That's contributions across every category, and that's basically the Durant special. He was also 9 of 16 from the field. He hit all 9 of his free throws. And it's a back and forward at the moment in the top 3 between him, Jimmy Harden, and Gianni. At the moment, Durant comes in at number 2. Jimmy is number 1. Durant has been 1 at times. Giannis is up there as well. But he has been ridiculously good, averaging 26, 8.5, and 4.5 this season. Look, some of his numbers have declined, definitely. His scoring is down, his assists are down. But what he's supplementing that with is ridiculously increased defensive numbers. We're talking about 33% increase on his steals. We're talking about the same increase in his blocks. We're talking about a 4% increase in his field goal percentage. His free throws have actually dipped, which is a pain in the ass. But the other numbers, obviously getting him numbers which are almost on par with what we saw last year in terms of his overall fantasy value. It's about the same. He was the second-ranked player last year. He's the second-ranked player this year, and he's not going anywhere outside the top 4, or you could probably say outside the top 3 at this point, with him and Harden probably locks for 2 of those 3 positions, and at the moment it's going to be tough to get Gianni out of there. But Durant, even in games that appear like they're going to be blowouts, like this one where the Warriors were favoured by 15.5 points, the Blazers kept it close somehow, and that enabled Durant to go off. And that's happening quite a bit at the moment, the Warriors keeping teams in it, or teams keeping it close against the Warriors. Don't want to undersell the opposition. And that's enabling some pretty spectacular fantasy lines to come out of players, especially Kevin Durant, who's been comfortably their best player so far this season. So he gets the monstrous line of the night for Wednesday's action. Let's talk waiver wire line of the night. The most hated player in the NBA? Maybe? Austin Rivers? He'd be close to it. 28 points for Austin, 2 triples, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, a steal, a block. He was 10 of 16 from the field, 6 of 7 from the line. I've been back and forward on Rivers for a while. He was the guy that I looked to add when Blake Griffin went down, and then it sort of went okay. And then he's had up and down performances with Chris Paul out, sometimes good, sometimes bad. And that's sort of what we get from Rivers. Like, his last game gave us 9, 4, and 5. This one, 28, 4, and 7. The one before that, 14 points. The one before that, 9. The one before that, 22. Then 19, and 7, and 16. So he's all over the place. But it doesn't necessarily mean that he is a must-own guy while Paul and Griffin are out. Because, yeah, he's playing 32 minutes a night in the last 2 weeks. but it puts him outside the top 140, and that's partly because his percentages are so bad. He's a horrible rebounder. He's averaging 1.8 rebounds a game this season. That is disgustingly bad. 2.1 in 31 minutes. That is like, that's Nick Young-esque. And I'd have to compare, but Young's probably rebounding at a better rate. His assists are only at 3 a game in these couple of weeks. He's at 4.5 over his last 4 when Paul has been out, so that's a bit more impressive. But he can put up decentish numbers, but far from, especially with so many other guys who are on the waiver wire over the last week who have become must-own, at least short-term guys. Brogdon, Carter Williams, Joshie Richardson, who was probably a must-own before, but now really solidified it. James Johnson now in Miami, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. It's hard to recommend Rivers as a must-add type of a player, but yeah, look, he does have value in anything deeper than 14-team leagues, or 14-team leagues even. He should be owned in any of those leagues of that size. So another nice performance from Rivers, and I suppose it's impressive considering it came in a game against the Memphis Grizzlies, who are noted as quite a tough opposition. Let's talk young gun of the night, Frankie Kaminsky, Frank the Tank. Big game from Frank. There was no Cody Zeller in this one, so Frank, he went off. He had 17 points with 6 boards. He went 6 of 11 from the field. He was 3 of 4 from the line, added 2 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. And I've been talking about Frank a bit this season. I was very high on him earlier. Thought with Marvin Williams struggling, there's a chance that he takes this role. And then Kaminsky sort of tailed off a bit himself. I still do believe that he has a decent fantasy future. He scored double digits in 2 of the previous 3 games. But these steal numbers in today's game, probably a little bit unexpected, I guess, or something you can't rely upon. And in the other times when he's been given an opportunity, his shot has not been great. It's been missing in a significant way, and in fact, he's shooting under 39% from the season, and that's a horrible number for a big man. And it's a regression from last year where he was a 41% shooter. His threes are at 28%. His free throws are only at 73. Now, he is 94% over the last 2 weeks, and he is a very good free throw shooter. So there's a lot of things that just don't add up with Frank. Like, why is he shooting so badly from 3? Why aren't his free throws going in? Lots of things that don't really warrant explanation. To me, he is just a deep league guy at this point, but he's always worth a look because Marvin Williams is not that good. He is improving, definitely Marvin. But Frank is a guy that if he gets it together can be a player that instead of playing 24 a night, which is what he's currently doing, maybe he gets 26 or 27 a night, and that might bump him inside the top 150. I think it's going to be a stretch for him to be ever considered a must-own player in fantasy leagues, though, at this early point in his career. The dud of the night, Zach Randolph in Memphis. There was no JaMychal Green, who was out with a face fracture. Zebo didn't move into the starting lineup. That honour went to Jarrell Martin. And then you could have thought, okay, Zebo's going to play some extra minutes. Well, he didn't, actually. They're limiting him to playing centre a lot of the time this season. That's something that David Fisdale was pretty clear about in the preseason, and they're sort of sticking with it. He only played the 19 minutes here, 13 and 3. Yeah, it's not a horrible night, but no threes, no assists, no steals, no blocks, 6 of 12 from the field and 1 of 2 from the line. I don't think that Zebo is a must-own player in 12-team leagues. In fact, not that I don't know, he is not a must-own player in 12-team leagues, even with JaMychal Green out. I think you can do better than Zach Randolph, and I reckon he's holding on in the 75% of leagues that he's owned in based on name value only. The name value does have a certain ring to it if you're in your leagues. Players will, and this is part of the argument that I had for trading Rondo before he got benched, use the name value. We even saw it today on the broadcast, Hubie Brown saying that Rajon Rondo was one of the best defensive point guards ever of all time in NBA history. And that is blatantly false. And it's narrative, it's name value, it's a load of shit that gets perpetuated by national media. And Zebo is one of those guys. So even if you just trade him for a top 100 player, it's a win. He's 176th on the season, Zebo. He's not an ownable player. Not much is going to change. But the name value might actually be able to net you something which is better than what you'd find off the waiver wire. And anytime you can do that, that's obviously a win for your team. That is all of the awards for the night. Let's now move into these games, talk about them in a little bit of extra detail. If my screen would respond. It's going very slowly. There we go. All right, we've got these games up now. There are 7 to discuss. The first one of them is the Atlanta Hawks and the Orlando Magic. The Hawks got the victory here after getting beaten the last time out pretty comfortably, 111-92 here, the Hawks. And this was the Kent Bazemore game. 27 minutes for Bazemore, 17 points with 4 assists, 2 steals and 3 triples. You know what I think about him. But this is what I always say with Bazemore, that he'll have a game. He'll have a good game and makes you go, shit, man, 4 assists, 2 steals, 17 points. Yeah, that's pretty good. And he did it on 6 of 9 shooting. He's just as likely to go 6 of 90 in the next. 90 shots is probably a lot. He's not Kobe. And that's what makes him tough. In a 10-teamer, there's no reason to hold Kent Bazemore. In a 12-teamer, I don't even think there's much point there because this 27 minutes is what he's getting. He's not playing more. He's not good enough to play more. But he will have these nights, and that always makes him a GPP option in DFS because these nights can happen for him. And I think he's pretty close to one of the perfect lineups of the night tonight. I'll have to go back when we get to that section later. We'll talk about it. But this is what he can do on occasion. But for seasonal leagues, it just doesn't happen often enough for me to justify holding a roster spot for him. Dwighty Howard went 13 and 12, had a steal and a block, also booed himself, which was hilarious. Walking out onto the court, I think in the first quarter, I think I tweeted the video out, pretty sure I did. I retweeted the video. He walks out, the crowd starts booing him. Dwight just joins in. Really, really humorous stuff, Dwight. Now, I don't normally find Dwight Howard funny. Very humorous. Very, very humorous. Big fan of that work from Dwight. Paulie Millsap, 16, 6 and 4 with 4 steals and 2 triples. Not a great free throw night, but a good otherwise everything else was solid, while Den Schroeder went 18, 6 and 7. Timmy Hardaway cooled off, which was expected. 12 points in 21 minutes with 2 triples. And Tabo, he's really dropping. His steal numbers are way down. His blocks are down. He's at 28 minutes here, 8 and 5 with a steal. There was a point where it really made sense to own him in every league. I don't think we're at that spot anymore. And you can use that spot for whoever else is on the waiver wire, streaming it in, getting someone else. Far from a must-own guy at this point, Tabo. He can still obviously be owned, but he's not that guy where I'd say, look, go and have a look. If you don't need points, he's going to help you because the steal numbers have dried up in a pretty considerable way for Tabo of late. The Magic had a couple of things happen. We had the return of Evan Fournier. He played off the bench and played 30 minutes, 14 points with not a lot else. I'm not worried that he played off the bench. He still got 30 minutes. He'll reintegrate himself as a big part of the rotation. But again, it doesn't matter if he's coming off the bench too much. He's still going to get his 32 to 33 minutes most nights. I imagine he'll be back starting, though, very soon. It wasn't like Jody Meeks went off here, 8 points in 24 minutes with 2 steals. So don't panic if you're Fournier. But returning to the starting lineup is Lord Alfred Payton. 35 minutes for Alfred, 14, 6 and 3. No, try it again. I can't read. 15, 4, and 6. That's better. With 3 steals and a block, and did it efficiently. Hit both of his free throws, went 6 of 13 from the field. And I've said this for probably the last... I never dropped him, to be honest, in any league that I owned him in. But about 2 weeks ago, everything was clearly going in his direction, and he had to be a must-own guy. And he still does. Obviously, he does now. He's improved a lot this season, and there'll be some stinkers in there, no doubt. And that's what happens when you're at the end of the bench type fantasy guy. That there'll be some good nights and there'll be some stinkers, but majority of the time, I reckon you're going to get solid numbers out of Lord Alfred Payton. Also, some debate going on about Lord Alfred Payton's hair. I love it. I think it's one of the best hairstyles in the NBA. But lots of hair discussion today on my Twitter timeline, and people saying that Payton is a clear top 5 worst haircut in the NBA. I cannot get behind that whatsoever. I'm just going to find the man who was discussing that, because it was Andy Bowsers, who's going to write an article on top 5 worst haircuts in the NBA, and he said Alfred's in there. I debated that, Andy. I do not agree with that whatsoever. Lord Alfred has a top 5 haircut in the NBA, and I will fight you online, verbally, meekly. But he's really good. He's improved a significant amount. Nick Vucevic, 30 minutes, 10, 6 and 6, a steal and 3 blocks. This is great news for Vucevic that he's playing like this. The better news for Vucevic is that Bismack Biyombo played just 21 minutes again. 2 and 2 for Biyombo, and he's just not that good. It's pretty straightforward. I've said this for months. Said it back in April last year, maybe. A long time. He's just not that good. And it does take coaches a while to figure out shit that most people know from a decent amount of time ago. I don't understand it, but it is great for Biombo's value. Not Biombo, for Vucevic's value moving forward. But Biombo, this is like about 6 in a row that he hasn't gotten over 25 minutes. He's owned in 57% of leagues. It's way too high. He can't be owned in 12-team leagues anywhere, really. They're just phasing him out. DJ Augustine back to the bench, but his role remained the same. 13 minutes, 6 points with 2 triples, and that's fine with him. Aaron Gordon, 25 minutes for Gordo, 15 and 10, 2 threes and 2 assists. He was everywhere. But the thing that bothers me again with this is he played well, 25 minutes. Like, that's bullshit. That's ridiculous. That's what continues to bother me about Aaron Gordon, is that he plays well and he doesn't play enough. We know his upside is high. It's going to be higher than nearly anyone on your waiver wire, pretty much. So you should grab him if he's available. But this frustrates me. He has a good night and he plays 25 minutes. Well, Jeff Green, it was not bad today in this one. Or not. It was good, Jeff Green, actually.
My name is Jeff. 3
of 4 from the field for 10 points in 21 minutes. But it's just limiting what Gordon can do. And even in situations like this, when Biombo is limited, they don't play Gordon at the 4 at all. Like, not a single minute. They'd rather play Vucevic and Biombo together than play Aaron Gordon at the 4, which to me is pretty much a fireable offence. It is disgusting coaching to play Biombo and Vucevic together and not give a single minute to Aaron Gordon at the 4. It is disgusting. But his play has significantly improved, and if he just gets consistent 30 minutes a night, which again, it feels really tough at the moment, but it can happen, then it's going to be some good stuff coming down the stretch for Az. Let's look at the next game, and that is the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Charlotte Hornets. Steve Adams, 18 and 12, a steal and a block on 8 of 10 shooting. He was a perfect 2 of 2 from the line, which he has been in both his last games. And I talked about him the other day, saying how he's been somewhat of a disappointment, I guess, with his blocks, because he's under 1 block a game. But over the last 2 weeks, Steve Adams is a top 40 player, still with 1 block a game. That's how good his other numbers have been. And he's really starting to get things going, and it looks like a real dominant force in the hairstyle department and with his on-court basketball play. If those blocks could ever get up to, say, 1.5, 1.8, man, 2 would be fantastic. I don't ever think they're going to, but he's putting up enough value even without the blocks, which is fine, and you deal with that. And I always say that, okay, he's a center that doesn't block shots. I don't care. I punt blocks. He fits in that build. I get blocks somewhere else. I get it from a power forward. I get it from another center. Whatever it is, you make it fit. And I'm not about pigeonholing guys into, like, you're a center, you have to block shots. If you're a center and you're Porzingis and hits 3 triples a game, that's fine too. I will take that. If you're DeMar DeRozan and don't hit any threes but get to the line 12 times and score 25 points, it's fine as well. There's no point pigeonholing players into it. Now, I often mention things like Damian Lillard, the reason why he's not a better player because he doesn't get any steals as a point guard. That's why he's limited, because he does so much in the other areas and then doesn't do that. But he doesn't really provide any sort of weird out-of-position numbers. But you still make them fit. Russ started off pretty slowly, threw a ball, hit the ref in the head. 33, 15 and 8, 2 threes, 2 steals and a block, and goodbye your field goal percentage, seriously. 10 of 31 from the field for Russ in this one, and that obviously limits his overall rotisserie value. But head-to-head, he's fine, clearly, because those other numbers are brilliant. And the best news here from Enes Kanter's night is he played 20 minutes. That wasn't a huge amount of minutes, but played 20 minutes, had 22 points, had 8 rebounds, took 13 shots. Now, the last game he played the minutes and just didn't take any shots, and I was like, okay, what's this? This is a weird scenario. Why has he been so terrible? Is it because Victor Oladipo's back? Well, we don't have that issue. Oladipo played 36 minutes and Kanter still took 13 shots. So, yeah, that's reassuring for him. Still not a must-own 10-team league guy, but the way that he's been playing at the moment is definitely pushing back towards that. Oladipo had 18, 3 and 5 with 3 triples. He was also not a good shooter, while Alex Abrines continues to be a really, really impressive shooter. 6 points with 2 triples, 21 minutes, while Anthony Morrow got 4, and I can see him maintaining this sort of playing time, although Cam Payne's return, which should come next week, is going to potentially eat into Abrines as well, although Payne's going to take all of Samaje Kristen's playing time, and he got 15 minutes in this one. Andre Robertson did nothing. Domantas Sabonis did nothing. For the Hornets, Kemba, 24 and 9, 2 steals and a 3, while Nick Batum had 28 points on the back of 13 of 15 from the line, a huge boost to that category. He had the 4 assists, a 3, and a block. While there was no Cody Zeller, I talked about Frank Kaminsky already, and Spencer Hawes is always going to be the one that benefits because Roy Hibbert's just a statue at this point. 3 and 2 for Hibbert in 21 minutes with 2 blocks, while Spencer Hawes had 24 minutes. He had 8 points, he had 4 rebounds, he had 2 assists. He also had a Richie Beno, which I did describe yesterday on the podcast for you, those of you who have no idea what it is. And this is Richie Beno, in fact.
2 for 222.
Yes, there you go. There is an audio clip. I'll play that again.
2 for 222.
There you go, Richie Beno. That is the origin of the Richie. So Spencer Hawes with the 2 threes, the 2 steals, and the 2 blocks. He will be out of the rotation when Cody Zeller returns. That's just what's happened. Marco Bellinelli returned. 15 minutes for Bally, 7, 2, and 1. So he's obviously not fully back from the ankle, and that enabled Kid Gilchrist to play 32 minutes, 14 and 11 for Kid Gilchrist on 7 of 9 shooting. Don't get your hopes up. His minutes will drop, as Jeremy Lamb's already did. He was down to 9 points with a 1-1 in 12 minutes here. Good to see Marvin Williams getting the 3 blocks. That's been sorely missing from his game this year. He had 8 and 8 in 27 minutes. You can own him. Don't be too excited about it though. The next game. The Milwaukee Bucks, the New York Knicks, Giannis Antetokounmpo with the game-winning shot. The Bucks beat the Knicks 105 to 104. Let's start with Yanni. 39 minutes for Yanni, 27, 13, and 4. A 3, a steal, 3 blocks. I put this poll up on Twitter today. Where is Yanni in the league? Is he a top 5, a top 10, a top 15 player? Top 10 won, but top 5 was surprisingly close. Now, he's not a top 5 player because Russ exists, LeBron exists, KD exists, Harden exists, Curry exists, Kawhi exists, then maybe Giannis. That might be a little bit of high praise. Chris Paul exists, but I would say he's top 10. That's how good this guy is at the moment, just doing absolutely everything for this team, and turned 22 about a month ago. The step back shot he hit to win. It wasn't a step back. It felt like you watch it and you go, that's a travel. Has to be a travel. Has to be. Because he just looks like he moved so far, and maybe technically it was, but in the end, who cares? It was a game winner. It looked great. He's ridiculous, and we love him. Someone posed this to me today, that if you're taking guys number 1 in dynasty drafts now, would you take Giannis over Towns? It's pretty bloody hard not to. He's top 3 already, and he's 22. I know Towns is 21. And he's got potential to be that. But for a guy that can be 25, 9, and 8 with 2 steals and 2 blocks, good percentages, and can improve his 3, it's really tough to go past. The other pleasing thing for the Bucks not only was also the Bucks, anytime they're on, you basically have to watch them because there's just so many stupid things that he does. Jabari's not far behind. Oh, no, he's a distance behind, but in terms of watchability, he's pretty good as well. 37 for Jabari, 15, 4, and 3. But the most pleasing thing to me in this game, aside from the Bucks getting a game winner, was Greg Monroe played 31 minutes. Unsurprisingly, he was good. 18, 9, and 4 with 3 steals and a block. 4 of 10 from the line is obviously horrible, but 7 of 10 from the field. And we banish that, honestly, shit kicker John Henson to 14 minutes. He's not a good player. He can block shots, but he is a horrible defender. He is a horrible offensive player. And once again, like Frank Vogel in Indiana, has Jason Kidd realized that maybe my best center is Greg Monroe? And it's not particularly close. Yes, Monroe has issues in the NBA. He's got defensive problems. He doesn't space the floor. You know what John Henson doesn't do? Space the floor. And you know what John Henson also has? Defensive issues. And you know what he is also? Significantly worse in every area to Greg Monroe, apart from blocking shots. That's it. No reason to hold Henson in 12-team leagues. Honestly, he might even be a 14-team cast off soon. Well, Greggy Monroe is really stabilising in 12s. Not sure I'd ever really see a game where I'd get Jason Terry at 28 minutes, but here we are, 8 points with 2 triples, while Brogo played 38, went 12, 6, and 8. All obviously remains to be seen exactly what goes down when Dellavedova comes back, but you'd have to imagine that Brogdon's at least established 25-plus minutes a night, and that means that you want to own him. He is still owned in under 50% of leagues, barely, but still is, so have a look. Tone Snell continues to be terrible, 3 points in 20 minutes for the Snellster. On to the Knicks, no Porzingis in this one.
Percentages.
Mallow, 30 points, 11 boards, 7 assists, 4 triples and 2 steals. And Melo's recent ranking is really in the toilet because his shooting percentage has been so piss poor. So it's probably not a great time to target Melo after he goes 30, 11 and 7. But in a situation, say he goes back and has another poor shooting night and the ranks reflect poorly on him, that's when you... And again, it's all playing name value. Melo's got name value. He's also got negative name value there. People will look at Melo, no, man, he's always been shit for fantasy. He's a chucker. He's got about 3 top 10 finishes on his resume, but people don't really realise that. They always think that he is overdrafted in fantasy when that isn't really the case. He's never really been overdrafted. He always feels like he's in the right spot, but people just love hating on Melo. So despite the name value, he's got like negative name value. Like we all know him, but oh man, Melo, pissed that off. No chance. Nah, not taking Melo. So if he has a bad night, the rankings, the player rate, or whatever starts reflecting that, you see if you can get him because he should comfortably be a top 50 guy by the end of this year. This was also the Mindaugas Kuzminskas game. 15 points in 19 minutes for Kuzminskas, 2 steals, 2 triples, a block. Easily his best night of his career. Helps because Lance Thomas is dreadful. Thomas played 38 minutes and went 7 and 4. Kuzminskas is not going to be on the rotation most nights because he does have some fairly significant defensive deficiencies, as the Knicks do as a whole in general, but at least he got things going offensively, and it's a very deep league streaming type of guy. Joakim Noah's not a deep league guy anymore. 31 minutes for Joakim. 8 and 16 with a steal and a block. That's totally standard league valuable. It is clear now, and it's been clear for a week or so that Jeff Hornacek is playing Noah big minutes, consistent minutes, and that's important for his value. So go ahead and own him. Obviously, Kylo Quinn's 12-team value is done. It's out the window. Billy Hernangomez didn't really have it, but his value has evaporated in even the deeper sort of leagues. He played 3 minutes in a game where Porzingis was out. Justin Holiday also got just the 10 minutes, which is disappointing. Derrick Rose went 15, 3 and 4 in his 33 minutes, an inefficient 7 of 18 for Rose. Did have a steal on the 3 though, so I always point out the nights when he doesn't. So when he does, I'll be fair, Derek. You did have those numbers there. Let's talk Bulls and Cavs. Dwayne Wade did play. LeBron did play for Cleveland, but they were without Kyrie and Kevin Love. So I guess that's a fair matchup. It's not really because the Cavs are still better, but the Bulls just they got a win, and it came on the back of 3-point shooting that was pulled out of their ass. Dwayne Wade hit 3 out of 4. Jim Butler hit 3. And then Dougie McDermott and Nick Mirotic both hit 3 apiece, which is understandable. Now, McDermott played the 32 off the bench, went 17 and 6 with 3 triples. But what we saw in this game is something that I have been talking about a lot. A lot more Mirotic-Gibson combinations in the front court, and a lot more Gibson-Mirotic-McDermott 3-4-5 combinations. And that worked well. Taj always does well against Cleveland. I don't know what it is, but he always does. 18 and 7 with a steal and a block on 9 of 10 shooting, so killed it there in 34 minutes. While Dougie McBuckets had, oh my God, I feel like I have to have a shower. I hate that nickname. I despise it, and I said it. Yuck. Oh, if this wasn't live, I'd go back and edit that. 17 and 6 with 3 triples in 32 minutes for Doug McDermott. On 6 of 9 shooting, yeah, that's fine. Look, he's playing better now. He still needs to take more threes because he shouldn't be taking the same amount of threes as Dwayne Wade and just 1 more than Michael Carter-Williams. He needs to be taking 7, 8 a game because he can hit them. He can do other stuff, but he hits these threes at a high rate, as we know. To me, he's just a points and 3 streamer, and that is it. Miro, 6 and 4, 3 triples, a steal, a block. His numbers, we're talking about a guy that's pushing into the top 100 now, and it seems to be on the way up with his role, so grab him. Much like I talked about with Aaron Gordon before, there's not many higher potential guys out there on the wire, and he is that one, so grab him. Dwayne Wade, not impressive, 10, 4 and 4 with 2 steals, while Jim Butler was disgusting until the last quarter. He had 20 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, and 3 triples with a steal, but the Bulls did get the victory, and some of that in large part to him, but he was putrid to start this game. Speaking of putrid, Robin Lopez went 6 and 5 in 23 minutes. He's really struggling at the moment. In a 10-team league, I don't believe you need to hold on to Lopez. In a 12, what's his upside? It's pretty limited. It's not exciting. There's nothing great coming out of his upside. That just sounds rude. But you can hold him in some cases, but I would rather just grab someone else. Like the Bulls need to realize that Mirotic Gibson is probably as effective, if not better, than Lopez Gibson. What is better than Lopez Gibson? It stretches stuff out, and that pairing works really well. Mick Carter-Williams played 28 minutes, 13, 3 and 3, a steal and a block, still took too many shots, second most on the team, which is just incorrect, and he hit 6 of them. It was a horrible start, but really got hot down the stretch, and he's holding on to this job for a while. Unless Gerard Grant comes up, it's not going back to Rajon Rondo. As for Grant, he was 5, 2 and 3 in 20 minutes. That should pique the interest of 16 to 20 team league guys, but Carter-Williams, absolutely a 12-team guy to take a peek at, as long as you're willing to deal with some poor field goal percentage on the Cavs. LeBron wasn't himself with his illness, but still 31, 8 and 7. While Geordie McRae, the alternate Geordie McRae, 21, 3 and 2. Shithouse yesterday, really good in the game before, so it's 2 out of 3 in the starts for Irving that McRae's been good. While Channing Frye had 15 points with 3 triples in his 30 minutes, replacing Kevin Love. That's fine, but Love and Irving are likely back for the next game. We don't know that 100%, but they are likely back for that next game, so any value in McRae and Frye obviously dips a little bit. I was impressed by Kay Felder, who played 16 minutes here, 9 and 5, took 11 shots. It's a lot of shots for someone in 16 minutes, went 3 of 11, but showed that he can make some tough layups and definitely stay on the court. Now, the Cavs are still looking for a backup point guard, but if he continues the ascent at the moment and the improvement in his play, then maybe he can become that guy. But he still has a fair distance to go. Now, on to the last 3 games of the night. The first one we've got to talk about is Miami, and we'll just divert ourselves from this game because Justice Winslow is out for the season. He has a torn labrum in his shoulder, and he will likely be out for the season. Now, with how piss poor the Heat are, even if he's ready to go by April, he's not coming back. He's out for the year, Justice. So what this does is it obviously means we drop Justice. He should have been dropped anyway, but he's dropped now. So it solidifies the value of Joshie Richardson. He should be owned. Tyler Johnson, he absolutely should be owned. He's comfortably a top 100. I think he's a top 80 player this year. Should be owned. James Johnson, who was remarkable again, should be owned. Dion Waiters, probably not. Probably not, but you're going to get more Tyler, more James, more Joshie Richardson, and their value is going to be fairly solid, and they should be owned in all 12-team leagues at this point. No point asking me and saying, which one do I add? Because it depends on what you want. What do you want? Do you want a steals and blocks guy? James Johnson was that guy who gets your rebounds. Do you want someone who's going to get you some assists and solid scoring at really high efficiency? Tyler Johnson. Do you want a guy like Josh Richardson who, if you need a guard, can get you good assists but also block shots? So it really does depend on what you need, but all of them have a real shot now to finish inside the top 100 this year. Let's talk about what they did here. Tyler Johnson was great. 23, 6 and 2, so aggressive rebounding it. 2 blocks, 2 threes, 1 steal. Huge night. Jimmy Johnson, 14, 6 and 6, 3 blocks and 2 triples. You know, I'm glad that I tweeted all this stuff out before the game and they went up and backed me up, so really happy about that, guys. Goran Dragic had 19 and 7 with 2 steals. Joshie Richardson, the shot off again, but 4 and 11, 9 points, but 8 boards, 4 assists, 2 steals, still getting the other numbers ticking over, and importantly played 37 minutes. And this was a game where Dion Waiters returned. Now, Waiters returned from a couple of weeks off with that groin issue. He played 10 minutes. He had 4 points, and Heat beat writers are a little bit, not worried, but they're speculating that Richardson won't be a big part of the rotation moving forward. Now, there's obviously some minutes there with Winslow, but it's going to be Dragic, Johnson, Richardson, and now there's Allington, and even Scooter Magruder taking some of those minutes. So I don't think that Waiters is going to be getting 30 a night. I think we're going to be looking at 24-ish, maybe 23, around that mark, and maybe even that's high. So don't pin your wagon to Dion, except in deeper leagues. Now, this is something I talked about yesterday about Will Reed. He played 23 minutes. He had 6 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 blocks. So everyone was really, really quick to give Willie Reed a reach around after yesterday's performance. And I was pretty quick to point out that, hang on, he did it when James Johnson was out. And the game before, when they both played, Johnson clearly outplayed him and was the better option. And I imagine that happens again. And it did here. So there are some ludicrous opinions going around that Willie Reed is the next Hassan Whiteside, that Willie Reed is going to be this must-own player down the stretch. He is definitely a good player, and I've been on record as saying that he can be a solid player. but he's not that good. Let's all just calm down here. Now, Whiteside will be out one more game on Friday, so assuming his salary remains the same, he becomes still a DFS option because Boogie Cousins is not a great matchup, and he could still even be streamed into standard leagues. But let's not get our hopes up too much with Big Willie style. Wayne Ellington had 13 points with 4 triples. You know what he is. He is a streaming three-pointer. For the Kings, no Rudy Gay again, and Omri Caspi left out of the rotation completely. That guy's season has been one of the more confusing things of the year, as is Dave Yeager and his "we need to play Malachi Richardson more" speech. Richardson again was a DNP CD, while good old Aaron Aflalo played 31 minutes and had 15 points. This is standard Aaron Aflalo, did jack shit in the other categories, but this is just what he does. Leave him for the deeper formats. Ben McLemore, he Pascal Siakam'd it. He played 6 minutes and did nothing at all. No reason why are we starting him. If you're not going to play McLemore and let him develop, don't go to Aflalo. Let's try. You know what? Scrap that. I know they're trying to battle for a playoff spot. I understand that. Scrap all that. Willie Cauley-Stein was better than terrible, which for him is a huge deal. And they went with more Anthony Tolliver in this one, 14, 3 and 2, while Costa Koufos, fresh off a big game, played just the 15 minutes, 6, 4 and 2 for Koufos. Matty Barnes occasionally has these big nights, 12, 7 and 5, but being able to trust Barnes is one of the more frustrating experiences in fantasy basketball. Leave him for the deeper stuff, while Garrett Temple had 15 points with 3 steals. And like so many players, Garrett Temple will come out there and do this, and you go, shit, Garrett Temple had 15, man, what do I do here? And you go, oh, hang on, it was on 65% shooting. He would probably go out there and shoot 30 in the next game because he's as up and down as they come, and he's really not that good in terms of being able to produce fantasy numbers. The important thing to note here is the return of Ty Lawson. Broken face, missed a game, and we were speculating, or I was speculating, you were listening yesterday, about Darren Collison, who played that huge game, 26 points, big minutes. Is this what sparks him? What do they do moving forward? Turns out no, because he played just the 27 minutes and Lawson played 29 with 15 points and 6 assists for Ty, and Collison went 10, 2 and 3. They both could be owned in 12-team leagues, but if you miss out of them, I definitely wouldn't give a shit because I think they're going to be stuck in that 110 to 140 zone for much of the year, splitting minutes, and that's not going to work out too well for leagues. Let's move on to Portland and Golden State. Actually, I didn't talk about who won that last game. It was the Heat on the road with a huge victory over the Kings. That's a massive disappointment for the Kings. Huge for the Nuggets, but a massive disappointment for the Kings. The Blazers taking on the Warriors. They kept it close, but they lost eventually 117 to 125. CJ McCollum on fire in the first half. Did his best Devin Booker impression and cooled off completely in the second half. He ended up going 13 from 31 for 35 points. Yeah, I think he had 28 in the first half, or maybe 26, so definite cool-off there. 9 boards, 5 assists, 2 blocks, and 4 triples for McCollum in another start with Dame Lillard out. Alan Crabb started alongside him, and this is one of the best Crabb games we've seen ever. 18, 3 and 5 with 2 triples. 36 minutes for Crabb. Don't get overly excited. You might get another start out of Crabb, and that might make him useful tomorrow, but realistically, he has not been a good fantasy contributor at any point in his career. Mason Plumlee breaking the Warriors' center curse, 16, 10 and 4, 3 steals and a block in 33 minutes. He has done it before with some big performances in games where you don't expect him to do it, and this is obviously an impressive night, and I loved Al-Farouq Aminu here. I did touch on this yesterday, saying he does have a really good record against the Warriors, and it came through. This doesn't always come through, but today with Aminu and with Taj, it definitely worked. 12, 7 and 5 with 2 steals and 2 triples for Al-Farouq. He has comfortably got top 100 upside, and that makes him a 12-team league guy, of course. He's got 100, maybe not 100, maybe 110, around that mark, whatever. But has been nowhere near it. He's owned in 34% of leagues, so he's available. He's a guy that, if you own Robin Lopez, you could consider switching, depending on exactly what stats you need. But Aminu's got this ability. The steals, the boards, the threes, can block shots, and he did it all in this game. So he is a name to watch. Mo Harkless had 10 and 7 with 2 triples, a steal and a block, still a 12-team league guy to me, while Evan Turner had the 11 in 30 minutes. For the Warriors, Steph had 35, 7 and 5 with 5 triples, a really good Steph night, while Draymond went 9, 7 and 11 with 3 steals and a block, and Clay had 14, 3 and 1. But Clay's best contributions came defensively. 3 steals, 2 blocks, and he shut down CJ McCollum in the second half. It wouldn't be the Warriors if no one else did anything, except Zaza had a good night. 13 points in 19 minutes, a steal and 3 blocks for Zaza. Leave him for the very, very deep stuff. And Ian Clark was unable to shoot 100% against the Blazers. It's a real surprise considering he's done it twice. Once, I think at the time it would have been 95% completion on his shots. But he wasn't able to get that going, just going 2 of 5 for 5 points in 12 minutes. Let's kick into the last game of the night, and that is the Memphis Grizzlies and the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers get the victory. Marc Gasol, 23, 4, and 6 with 2 triples, 2 steals, and a block. A huge night from Gasol. There was no JaMychal Green. There was no Chandler Parsons. Let's talk Parsons now. I really don't see Parsons being a guy anymore. It's impossible. Unless you're in first, maybe second. I just don't see it with Parsons. I just think the rests, I think the minutes, it's going to last too long. And the fact that he's looked absolutely disgustingly bad in those games. Now, if I'm in a Dynasty League, I go as low as I can to get him. Because I know he's got ability. And he's bounced back from knee surgeries before and has been able to do it. But in a redraft situation, or if you're competing in a Dynasty, holding on to him is really, really tough going. And I reckon you got to piss him off in standard leagues. But in Dynasty, go low. Go ridiculously low. Yeah, people believe that this guy's career is done, and you know what? It could be. I don't think it is, but it could be. But people do believe that. People are very upset that he goes out and hangs out with beautiful people and posts pictures of him without a shirt on Instagram. No idea why, but apparently that bothers people because it makes them think that he's not good at basketball. People are weird. Anyway, I think he'll be back, but it just feels like it's taking a very long time this year. Jimmy Ennis had a big one in his stead. 32 minutes for Ennis, 8, 6, and 2 with 3 steals and a block. That's harkening back to what we saw from Ennis to begin the season. I wouldn't put my money on that continuing to happen. The Grizzlies went super small in this one. Played lineups consisting of Gasol, Ennis, Allen, Conley, and Vince Carter for big chunks of this game, and Aaron Harrison also sharing the court in those lineups too. They were their 6 of their top 7 minute getters in the game, and Troy Daniels was the other one who played 24 minutes. So their big man, who was Jarrell Martin, Zach Randolph, they combined for 30 minutes, while Marc Gasol played 36. So that's 66 minutes out of the 96 minutes available at those big men positions. So they went small for huge amounts of playing time in the game. Conley had a good one, 17, 7, and 12. Tone Allen was also impressive, 13 and 6, while Aaron Harrison went 7, 5, and 7. For the Clippers, talked about Austin already. Jamal Crawford had 22 points with 4 assists. He has these occasional shooting outbursts. Really tough to own him, though, in standard leagues, in my opinion. While Ray Felton went 11, 4, and 6 with 4 steals. Another very solid performance from Felton without Chris Paul. Now, Paul is likely back on Friday, limiting what Felton and possibly what Rivers can do, and to a lesser degree, Crawford, too. 19 points in 37 minutes for JJ Redick. Those minutes will come down. While DeAndre Jordan almost 20-20. He went 18 and 20. He was 7 of 10 from the line, and he was 4 of 11 from the free throw line, but you shouldn't care about that. Mo Spates, 5 and 6 in 13 minutes for Mo, playing backup center only. I'm surely none of you still own him in 12-team leagues, which you could have. You could have streamed him, no doubt, and tried it, but it's just not happening on a regular enough basis. All right, that is it for all of the action from Wednesday. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back to talk DFS for Thursday.
I saw your picture today. Got me thinking about the things that I would say. But I know you're happy now when you're someplace far away. And I can't remember the way you taste. I walk down your old street, and I wonder if we'll ever meet again. Without a second glance, you turned your back, my friend. This is the end, and I can't pretend I'm ready to be your friend. So don't go.
All right, everyone, we're back. Let's talk perfect DFS. Let's start on FanDuel. I decided to create a FanDuel lineup today just to see how it would go. It ended up totaling 342, which obviously wasn't enough to win the GPPs on there, but a comfortable cash line. So I might do that a couple of times and just create some fake DraftKings and FanDuel lineups and see how they end up going. But would have cashed on both those sites today. Unfortunately, I can't play over there, as you're well aware. Let's talk FanDuel now. Didn't have the perfect lineup. Russ Westbrook 65 and Austin Rivers at 43.3. Shooting guard Yanni went 53.6 and CJ went 51.1. The small forwards Melo went 55.7, and those first five you could easily have predicted those. Dougie McDermott at 27.7 in a game with Wade back, probably a little bit hard to expect that to go down. Same with Frank the Tank at 31.2. Taj Gibson at 30.4. Greggy Munro at 39.8. I believe all those guys were in my picks of the day yesterday, with the exception of Doug and Frank, maybe. I'm not 100% sure, but close to that anyway. Yeah, so you could have got a pretty decent score today, I reckon. 397.8 with 59,800. And plenty of listeners to this podcast won some decent money today, so congratulations to you guys. DraftKings, CJ McCollum 56, Austin Rivers 46.5, Mallow at 60.75, Taj at 32.25, Steve Adams 42, Yanni at 57.75, Frank the Tank at 33.5, Greggy Munro at 41.75, and the total is 370.5, and that was 49,900. The FanDuel one, I didn't give the cost of that. That was 59,800. Also, someone left a comment on the YouTube video yesterday, I believe, asking why do I give all the players childish nicknames? I didn't realize they sounded childish. I'm just giving them Aussie nicknames, guys. When you call them Greggy and Zachy, it just sounds childish. All right, I didn't realize that. They're not childish to me. They're Aussie nicknames, and that's exactly what anyone that I saw called that had that name. That's exactly what you would call them, and that's what we're sticking with. Let's go to the games. Let's start off with Brooklyn and Indiana. The Pacers are favored by 10.5. The total here is 219. We know that Rondé Hollis-Jefferson has been ruled out of this one already for Brooklyn, and Rod Stuckey is questionable for Indiana. So there might be some value happening there. Probably not a big deal, but there's a couple of things we need to pay attention to. Let's talk point guards. Jeffy Teague at 7,800. He has been good. This matchup is good, but almost 8,000 for Jeff Teague is not. I don't really want to be in the Jeff Teague business for $8,000. I'll leave it at that. On DraftKings at 7,400, way more appealing. He's averaging 36 over the last three. That's still not quite enough at 7,400, but this matchup could bump him 36, 37, 40 points even. But hate the 7,800 for him on FanDuel. Much prefer him over on DraftKings there. No Jeremy Lin, so we're going to get Isaiah Whitehead, we're going to get Spencer Dinwiddie, and we're not going to want to use either of those guys. At shooting guard, Shawnee Kilpatrick has definitely been down. He's at 4,400. He's only averaging 17 points in the last three games. His salary is 4,400 on FanDuel. It's 54 on DraftKings. So on DraftKings, he's a no for me, but on FanDuel, he's a pretty big yes. Mainly in tournaments though, I think I know he's got the upside to go and drop you a 40 or a 45. He obviously hasn't been doing that yet, but this is a decent spot for him, I think, without Jeremy Lin as well, to take on some usage, and hopefully things start to turn around for him after a fairly lean run. The other shooting guards, Stuckey, Alice, Randy Foy, Joe Harris, they're not really going to be DFS targets. Paulie George at 7,900. He has been good. Or better, maybe that's the best way of putting that. Do I want to spend 7,900? Yeah, I think it's a pretty good deal in this matchup against Brooklyn. If we look at him though on DraftKings, his salary has jumped by $800 up to 8,700, and that is a big no thanks for me over there. So DraftKings going super aggressive on some of the pricing in this game, so not really keen on either of those guys. Paul George on DraftKings, but I do like him on FanDuel. Let's rephrase all of that. Let's talk Bojan Bogdanovic. He's at 4,100. He is only ever a GPP guy because he does have good upside. He's got 7, 8x upside and even higher, 9, 10x upside potentially. But he's just so inconsistent. He's averaging just 15 over the last three. You cannot deal with that in cash. The guy who's a sneaky chance here to be interesting is Karis LeVert, my man with the jersey behind me, thanks to Charles Oakley. 3,600 for Karis. Could he take a big chunk of Rondé's minutes? Yeah. Could it also go to Joe Harris? Yeah. So that's the risk. But Karis has got a very good fantasy game. What if he gets 24, 25 minutes? What if that turns into 30 points? At 3,600, I reckon you'd be pretty happy with that. He's a minimum salary on DraftKings at 3,000, so I really like him over there. Only GPPs again, and we're always looking for the upside in GPPs, but that's an opportunity that's opening up for him, and there's definitely no stability with it, but there's an opportunity there. The other small forward, CJ Miles, little dog Glenn Robinson at 37. Now, Glenn Robinson at 37 is not a horrific cash play. He's also not a good one, though. So I reckon he's a fade. His upside's not high enough to look at in tournaments, but he is averaging 21 over the last 3. Just the return of potentially Stuckey and Alice there now does limit what Robinson can do. At power forward, Thad Young against his former team. He's at 5,200. He has put up a few stinkers recently, averaging just the 22 points in recent games. But I do like this opportunity for him. He had 26 points against the Nets. Not a tough one. His salary is not, or hasn't changed, so it's not high. But when we look at him on DraftKings, again, just too high, 5,600. You don't want to be touching him at that price there, but love it. Love the matchup for him on FanDuel at 5,200. Really enticing. Trevor Booker's salary has jumped by $500 up to 5,500 on the back of a very strong performance. He is averaging 31 across the last 3, but 26 across the last 5. The Pacers is a positive matchup for him as well. If it hadn't jumped by that $500, I'd be more interested in it. But it's jumped by 600 on DraftKings as well. So far from a priority sort of a guy. At centre, we've got two blokes who should come into consideration on most sites. Miles Turner is at 6,700. I don't know if Turner is really a GPP guy. I'm not sure how high his upside is, but this is as tasty a matchup as it gets for centres really at the moment. Great ease, great DVP. Really suits what Turner can do. It's really hard to go past him at 6,000. So there are other good centres out there, but he is a really good option over on FanDuel. At 68 on DraftKings, same thing. He's a pretty solid option over on that side. His last 3 games against the Nets have yielded 37 points. So at 6,700, you'd be pretty okay with that in both cash, and I reckon he's got tournamenty upside as well. Just less upside, less of a tournament guy. Brookie Lopez at 7,500. He's had a $500 price rise on FanDuel. He has on DraftKings too, a $600 one, but he's only at 6,700 over there. This is it's probably not one I want to deal with on FanDuel, but on DraftKings I do still like it at 6,700. The guy's averaging 33 points across the last 5, and he's got 40-point upside here. I do think we're due for a big Brook game. We haven't had one in a while. We had solid ones, nothing terrible, but nothing huge, and I reckon we could be getting a big one soon. I would look at a GPP on FanDuel. I would be okay with using him in cash on DraftKings and GPPs, of course, there. All right, the next game we take a look at, where are we at? It's the Utah Jazz. They take on the Toronto Raptors. No George Hill. We've got Dante Exum, who is questionable, and for the Raptors, Patrick Patterson is also questionable with his knee issue. I'm going to assume Patrick Patterson is back for this one. Dante Exum doesn't really have much of an impact whatsoever. Even if he plays, it's going to be Shelvin Mack who gets the majority of the minutes here. Now, Mack is at 3,800, hasn't been blowing the doors off, averaging just 18 points across the last 3 games. The matchup here is a negative against Toronto, so we don't love that, of course, but the ability for him to get 30 minutes and beat that number, which he obviously can do because we've seen him do it a few times, is nice. 4,700 on DraftKings, that can go, you know what it can go and do. There's no chance of using him at that price. It just doesn't make sense. He could exceed it, but it does not make sense to do it as a value proposition. But at 38 on FanDuel, absolutely worth a look. And if you're looking for cheap point guards, he might be one to consider, even in cash. I do like him more for tournaments, though. Kyle Lowry, 8,100. Well, he was disgusting in the last game. He had 13 points in that one. This matchup is obviously not a great one against Utah, but the absence of George Hill has actually brought the DVP and the E's more closer to average. Lowry is a good player, but how the Raptors honestly have been shithouse on this road trip. San Antonio destroyed. Lakers, Phoenix, yuck. Like not good performances from this Raptors team. Lowry's had some good individual performances, but at 8,100 on FanDuel, I'm not ready to get stuck into it. Now on DraftKings, he's dropped by $600, so he's down to 7,800. That's better. That is a real useful guy to have a look at that price tag. He's still averaging, despite that stinker in the last game, 40 points across the last 3. I can get behind that. Not so much on FanDuel, not really as behind that. Corey Joseph he's just a fart, so let's forget about him. And let's move on to the shooting guards. Rod Hood is at 4,300. Played 35 minutes in the last game. Only gave you 19 points, but the minutes were up. Now the salary's dropped by 300 on FanDuel. He's at 47 on DraftKings, so that's a no-go. But I don't hate him as a GPP. We know he can go off. We know he can go for 30, 35, 40 even, and at 4,300 that could really work out. So Hood's a GPP pool player, but that's it. No cash reliability there whatsoever. Whereas DeMar DeRozan now at 8,300, you look, not a good matchup. Hate it at that price on FanDuel. But we flip to DraftKings, his salary's dropped by $900. So he's gone up by $400 on FanDuel, down by $900 on DraftKings. He's at $7,200 on DraftKings. That should be smashed. That should be smashed very, very hard. So I reckon you should be looking, even though it's a negative matchup, that price just makes you go, shit, even if it is negative, I'm still going to be able to get 37, 38 points out of DeRozan. He's averaging 41 over the last 5. His lowest score is 30. And at 7,200, that's not an absolute disaster. It's not ideal, but it's not a disaster. So yeah, I really like him on DraftKings. Norm Powell, love him. Not enough minutes. Small forward, Gordo Hayward, 7,700 for Gord. Didn't have the best night against Boston, but yeah, I think he's worth. He's definitely worth taking a look at here in this game here. The other thing to worry about with the Raptors, I did talk about the road trip. They're back home now, but honestly, when teams come back from a big road trip, the first game back at home can often be the worst. So there is definitely some concern there for the Raptors in that sort of a sense. Now back to Hayward, he's got an okay history against the Raptors. He does decently against them. 7,700 though just feels a tad high. He's at 78 on DraftKings, so I'll say the same over there. Yeah, decent-ish cash guy, but nothing too great. Damari Carroll's yuck. Teza Ross, he's at 4,100, Rossi, averaging 23 over the last 5. Had some good games in there, but not the right spot for him. Joe Ingles, Joe Johnson, nah. Power forwards, Derek Favors is at 4,500 on FanDuel. Impressively, he had 29 points in 29 minutes in the last game, and the thing I take away from that is the 29 minutes. That's the most important thing, and if he gets 29 minutes here, I feel pretty confident that he'll be at least able to get me 25 points, which at 4,500 should be enough. On DraftKings, he's at 4,900. Again, if he gets 25 minutes, I assume he gets me 27 points. And that's enough on both sides. So there is a certain degree of risk there because the game before he played 29 minutes, he played 18. And yeah, that was a pain. But that was a back-to-back. This is not a back-to-back. So it remains to be seen exactly. But I do really think Favors has got a really significant upside to beat that price tag. We won't use Pat, Trey Lyles, Boris Diaw, neither. Nor Pascal Siakam, who put up 6 points in 26 minutes in the last one. At center, Jonas Valanciunas, he's at 5,100. Yeah, look, 8 points in the last game. But pick and rolls with Pau Gasol and LaMarcus Aldridge and pick and pops, it's a bit of a different story versus Rudy Gobert. Now, Gobert's been a really good finisher, but they don't give him the ball as often. Can Valanciunas stay out there and play enough minutes? The salary is ridiculously appealing. It's 4,500 on DraftKings. That's crazy low, and he can easily get it. But do we get 22-minute Valanciunas or do we get 29-minute Valanciunas? It's a tough one. I would leave him for tournaments only. As for Gobert, he's at 7,400. He is averaging 35 on FanDuel points in the last 3. This is a marginally negative matchup. That's a decently negative matchup for him with the DVP and E's and all that sort of stuff. But he's I don't know, he just feels tough to use in DFS a lot of the time. His price just always feels $400-500 too high. He's at 73 on DraftKings, and just another situation where I'm just not totally feeling it. Bebe, he's averaging 8 points in the last 3, 11 in the last 5, so that's not really conducive to great DFS value. All right, the next game we talk about is Charlotte. They take on Detroit. The Pistons are favored by 4, and the total is 205.5 points here. The only real injury we're looking at, is to Aaron Baines from Detroit, who's got that ankle problem and missed the last game, and Cody Zeller with a concussion in Charlotte, who's missed the last couple of games as well. If Zeller is out, that opens up Kaminsky for GPPs, and it opens up Spencer Hawes as a cheap cash option and a cheap GPP guy. For this game, I talked about the Pistons are favored by 4. Let's look at point guards. Kemba is at 8,100. I think that Kemba is a fairly solid, a fairly good guy to have a look at here. I don't know how high his actual upside is at that price, but I feel pretty good about Kemba getting 40 in a matchup against Detroit, which is a very, very positive one for him here. Going up against Kemba is Reggie Jackson. He's at 6,400. He's been killing that number. He's averaging 39 in the last 3, and importantly, that's coming in 32 minutes. So I do like Reggie Jackson. If we look across at these guys on DraftKings, I really like Kemba at 79. Reggie's at 67 with a $700 price rise. You're much less keen on him at that extended or accelerated price rise over there. So not as interesting, but like Kemba on both and Reggie. Over on FanDuel, Ish Smith, Ramon Sessions, they're not really tickling anyone's fancy. At shooting guard, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is at $5,700. The matchup is beautiful. He has been relatively consistent lately, which is a big thing for him, averaging 30 over the last 3. I'm fine with giving a go to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope here and hoping he can continue it going. He's at 58 on DraftKings, so I'm not quite as happy with him over there, but I still think that I know it's a decent matchup for him, but it just doesn't fall quite into the same value proposition as some of the other shooting guards on that slate. 78 for Nick Batum, too high. Not interested in taking Batum at that sort of a price tag. Small forward Marcus Morris. It's standing out to me like dog's balls, this Marcus Morris price. 43 on FanDuel and 42 on DraftKings, but he has been piss poor. But he can have 30. He can have 35. So I do think that he becomes a tournament option and a pretty decent upside tournament guy, because we know he's getting minutes, whether that's 29 or 36, but he's at least getting 29 minutes. And that should give you 22 points, which 22 points at 4,300 puts you at 5x. So it makes him not a bad cash play, but he's also got the ability to have a big one and have 37, 38, 40 points and really start to bring in the value. So I think he's in play here. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, we don't know what Bellinelli will do in terms of minutes, but he's a risky option regardless. So no for him. Stan Johnson, Bellinelli himself as well. Power forward, Marv Williams, 4,300. Has been improving, but it's been not enough to really get anything happening for him in a DFS point of view. He's at 43 on DraftKings as well, where Frank the Tank at 4,000 obviously had a monster 31 point today, but had been struggling. His average over the last 5 is just 19 points. So, I guess expecting him to do it again is going to be completely dependent on the fact if Zeller plays or not. And even if he does, it's GPPs only. Johnny Lua is at 49 on FanDuel. He had 25 in the last game. He's got a 24 average over the last 5, which is fine at 4,900. I don't think there's much upside in John Lua. He could be just a cheapy cash guy that you want to have a look at. Whereas Toby Harris, the other power forward, he's at 5,900. Again, I don't think there's much tournament upside in Tobe, but I do think that he has some cash viability. He's at 61 on DraftKings, which I'm less of a fan of, but I can still totally get behind it. Centers. Drummond is at 7,900. Like the matchup for him. I really, really like the matchup for him. In fact, it's a huge positive. He has been playing consistently well recently as well, which is not something you normally say for Drummond. He's at 43 over the last 3 games, 40 over the last 5, and at 7,900, which is 7,800 on DraftKings. I think he's a fine play on both sides, and that's not something I say about Drummond all that often. At centre, we'll be looking at, obviously Roy Hibbert, Aaron Baines. None of these guys are interesting. Spencer Hawes is the only one who comes into consideration if Zeller happens to be out. If Zeller plays, I don't really think it's a great spot to use him, to be honest. All right, let's go into the next matchup. We're talking Oklahoma City. We're talking Houston. It's Westbrook. It's Harden. It's going to be a fun night to watch fantasy stats tick over, that's for sure. The Rockets are 8.5-point favourites. The total here is 225 points. Let's talk point guards now. Pat Bev is back for this one. He's at 5,900. Yeah, not sure I love it for DFS purposes at 5,900. I really can't get behind Pat Beverley at that. On DraftKings, though, he's at 53. That's better. You're talking my language there, where he's averaging over 30 across the last 5. That I can totally get behind. Russ, 12,400. $600 price rise on FanDuel. Patrick Beverley matchup. He's hard to fade, but I think you almost have to. High price, shit matchup, back to back. Russ was losing his cool today. Pinged the ref in the head with the ball. Averaging 50 the last 3 times he's played Houston, which for everyone else would be brilliant. But at 12,400, I need more than 50. I need 60. I need 60 plus. It is hard. I think it's a fade situation for Russ. I do. Now on DraftKings at 12,300, I think he's a decent play there. But still, the same thing applies. Now I like that his salary's dropped by $300 on DraftKings, but I still think that he is somewhat fadey or GPP only. We'll see if that bites me in the ass. Shooting guards, Jimmy Harden. He's at 12,000. He is averaging just 69 over the last 3.
Giggity!
He doesn't have a great record against Oklahoma City as well, only averaging under 50 in the last 3. He has got a salary rise now of $700, but the matchup is a real positive one for him. I feel pretty confident of him at least getting 55 plus, which at these elevated salaries, get 57, 58, it's okay at that salary. Much happier spending it on Jim than I would be on Russ, that 12,000 price tag range. But yeah, still, there are some concerns with him. Oladipo's at 5,900. That's a $500 price rise in FanDuel, so that doesn't really get me interested. And he's risen by 500 on DraftKings, up to 6,000 as well. That's okay, but I just don't see any upside in it. There's no GPP stuff there. You might look at it in a cash game setting and feel pretty confident about getting at least 30 out of him. But that new salary has been a real bummer. Eric Gordon, 5,800. Been putting up some nice numbers, really. 37 in the last game, 27 average across the last 5, but just not really happening for me here. Not a massive fan of using him in this spot. It's actually somewhat of a negative matchup again against the Thunder. The shooting guards do tend to get limited, and that could affect him. Small forwards, Andre Robertson, he gives you nothing. Jeremy Grant, ditto. Trev Ariza is at 5,900, has been killing it at the moment, averaging 32 over the last 5, 34 over the last 3 on FanDuel, but he's at 5,900, so it does feel a little bit expensive with a $300 price rise on that. Same on DraftKings, where he's now to 5,800. So I don't love it. It's a negative matchup. I reckon I'll fade Trevor Ariza. Power forwards, Enes Kanter. Yeah, fantastic again today, another 31 points. He's at 5,300 Kanter. And despite a real stinker in the middle there, is averaging 25 points in the last 5, which at 5,300 is fine. The Rockets don't really. I don't look at the Rockets and say this is a great matchup for Kanter. That's what I'm trying to get out. So yeah, I think this is a night to stay away from him. Same thing on DraftKings, even though he's at 5,100. I think it could be a night to steer clear of Enes Kanter. Ryan Anderson's at 55. That's only ever a GPP option for Ryan on both sides, where he's at 56 on DraftKings. Not interested in him in any sort of cash situation. At center, Montrezl Harrell. The table is at 4,700. He's averaging 31 over the last 3. At 4,700, it is almost as big a no-brainer as you can get. Now on DraftKings, it's a bit of a different story because he's up to 5,500. Doesn't totally turn me off using him. I think he's still going to have use, but on FanDuel, that is one of the better plays of the day, I believe. Now, Steven Adams is a fair handbrake for production. We know that. But when you're dealing with a bloke who's giving you probably an extra $1,500 worth of value every time he steps out there, he can afford to be handbraked a little bit. And yeah, he probably doesn't give you exactly as much as what he would going up against somebody else. but he's got so much extra cash to play with his value on FanDuel that makes him a really good option. On DraftKings, not quite as much leeway, but yeah, love him on FanDuel. As for Adams, he's at 5,600. Love that as well. He's been killing it. He had 39 today. He's averaging 34 in the last 3 at 56. Montrezl Harrell's not slowing him down. He's at 6,000 on, so 5,600 on DraftKings. So I think he can be absolutely used on both of those sites. Let's move to the next game now. We're going to talk Atlanta. They're taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pels are favored by 3. The total is 205.5. 205.5. Wow. 205.5. Donatas Motiejunas has signed with New Orleans. We don't know if he will play in this game, but he looks like he's going to be part of the rotation. That is bye-bye Terrence Jones for all you seasonal people that are still listening. So you can piss him off immediately in 12-teamers. He's not an ad, Motiejunas. He's going to need 28, 29 minutes a night to really even sniff 12-team value. And yes, Dante Cunningham is ahead of him. Yes, Solomon Hill is ahead of him. But there goes my jersey's falling down behind me. For you guys who saw that on the video, that scared the shit out of me. Need to regroup. Motiejunas, yeah, I don't think that he's an ad, and he's definitely not a DFS option at this point. Let's get into the point guards. Drew Holiday is at 7,200. Good matchup for him, really good. We know how easy it is for point guards to put up numbers against the Hawks backcourt. Drew's going to give you 38, it feels like, 36, maybe, yeah, around that mark most nights. And at that price of 7,200, I look so bare behind me. And that sort of value at that price really makes him a solid cash game point guard. So I do like Drew Holiday here a fair bit. If we look at him over on DraftKings, he's at 7,200. That's a $700 price rise, so that's making me be a little bit pissed off. But still, I think there's value to be extracted out of him, so definitely not someone to shy away from. Dennis Schroeder at 6,800 had another 35 points today. I think you should feel pretty confident about Schroeder being able to get you at least 30 in most matchups. Now, it's somewhat of a good matchup for him as well, going up against the Pelicans. So, like today, where it was Peyton versus Schroeder, you can go Holiday versus Schroeder, and you can use both guys in cash and in GPPs, I believe. Shooting guard, Etuan Moore's at 36. Now, there's not a lot of cheap shooting guards available on this slate. Etuan Moore is an okay upside play, but really nothing to really look at in cash. Timmy Hardaway is a GPP maestro. He had 35 in that game against the Spurs. Had 15 today, and that is the life of Tim Hardaway Jr. Langston Galloway, Bud Hield. Bud had 27 in the last game. He's averaging 23 over the last 3. Wouldn't hate using him. 3,800 on DraftKings as well, so a solid salary. I do have worries that if the shot doesn't fall, we're not going to see a huge amount out of Bud. But he's been a lot better recently, so I do give him credit for that. Tyreek Evans is at 53 on FanDuel. Hate it there. He's at 4,400 on DraftKings. Still not a huge fan of it there, but on some sites you'll see him priced significantly lower, and he does come into play there. Kyle Korver is a tough guy to continually use also. Small forward Kent Bazemore, 4,000. Obviously repaid value today at 2,700. Yeah, but, you got no way of trusting him. So it is strictly a GPP situation for Baze. Tabo is not happening anywhere, so he's a fade. If you look at Bazemore over on DraftKings, he's at 4,200, so the same thing happens over there. He's still a GPP type of player. Dante Cunningham gives nothing. Solly Hill, the same thing. Power forward, here we go. Paul Millsap, 8,200. He's averaging 42 across the last 3. Millsap, a solid matchup for him. I think that you can look at that, but I would be more interested in the 7,400 that he is priced on DraftKings. That is a sensational price, and that should make him a very, very handy guy to build lineups around. Tony Davis at 11,100. He's averaging 50 the last 3 times he takes on Atlanta in FanDuel scoring. He's averaging 49.5 his last 5 actual games in the NBA. His lowest score in his last 5 has been 38. 11,000 is a fair chunk, and you want him to go over 50, but I still think that if you're looking for a high-priced guy, I think you're going to have some decent value with Davis. And he's obviously got 70, 80 point upside. So, some GPP upside there for Davis. Now, he's at 10,000 on DraftKings, so a fair bit cheaper. Probably like it a little bit more on DraftKings, but it's still a decent play with some solid value to be returned. At center, Dwight Howard, 7,700. GPP, I think, for Howard, not feeling it. A little bit better on DraftKings at 7,500, but his recent form has been okay, but he hasn't looked as engaged as we'd want him to be to start putting up those big numbers that we hope to get from him a lot of the time. The next game we take a look at, we're looking at Phoenix and Dallas. The Mavericks are favored by 5.5, and the total is 204.5 points. Brandon Knight missed the last game with a wrist sprain, and Andy Bogut left the last game with a knee issue. He is probable. Brandon Knight is questionable. Let's take a look at this game now. Let's start with the point guards, and we've got Eric Bledsoe from the Phoenix Suns. He's at $8,000. Yeah, he is averaging over 40 the last three. The matchup is terrible though, so I would leave that as GPP only, but it is a shit matchup. As for Darren Williams, he is at 6,100. He gets a good matchup, but his numbers have been nowhere near that sort of a salary, so he is not a cash option to me. He is a GPP only sort of a player. If we look at what they do over on DraftKings, it's a similar story. 7,300 for Bledsoe, which is not bad. Much better than the FanDuel, but the matchup is horrible. And Williams is at 62, so a much worse situation for Darren Williams over there. Devin Harris, no thank you. Tyler Ulis, also no thank you. And let's move to the shooting guards. Devin Booker, 5,900. Negative matchup for him as well. Not a terrible one, but a negative one. He has been okay of late. Fluctuating with his shooting, obviously, which is more a detriment to seasonal leagues, but in DFS, his numbers have been fairly solid, putting up 27 over the last three. Probably just look at him in GPPs on FanDuel, and at 63 on DraftKings, he's even a tough guy to use in GPPs. 5,500 for Wes Matthews. Not really. This game is just not a great DFS game at all. Wes Matthews is not someone I want to spend 5,500 on. And Seth Curry, Seth's all right in a GPP situation at 4,300. There's definitely something you can look at. Don't really like it as much at 43 on DraftKings, but he does have some modicum of value. Small forwards, PJ Tucker and TJ Warren, the initials, the J's. What do we do? 3,900 for PJ. His upside is so minuscule that I reckon he is not someone I want to get involved in. And TJ Warren is just so all over the place with rotational minutes. He played 17 and had 3 points in the last game. The one before that, 39. Big numbers. He's at 4,700. With that sort of maddening inconsistency, on both DraftKings and FanDuel, you have to look at him as a GPP only sort of a player. The pencil Harrison Barnes is at 6,900. He is averaging 37 over the last three. Much better that he is playing at the 4 now alongside Dirk. Still don't love that price though. This matchup's a decent one for him against Phoenix, but the price just feels like it's just a little bit high to me. Dorian Finney-Smith offers us nothing. Power forward Alex Len is at 4,200 on FanDuel. Had a nice 23-pointer in the last one, but it's just not really that interesting to me. Dwight Powell, same. Marquise Chris was monstrous. Had 31, and at 3,800, having a bloke go for 31 is obviously returning some good numbers. You want to be pretty ballsy to take a look at Marquise Chris, but it would have to be GPP. I don't reckon I'd be willing to do that. At center, Bogey, no. Let's talk Dirk. Sorry, 5,300 for Dirk on FanDuel. Don't like it. 4,400 on DraftKings for Dirk. Do like it. He played 24 minutes in the last game, put up 23 points. You get me 23 points at 4,400, Dirk, then you can have a spot in the lineup, even if it's cash. And you'd have to think that his numbers are trending upwards, so that's a good sign. At centers, Tyson Chandler at 5,000. He's sporadic, and his upside is all right, but it's not even high enough for me to look at as a GPP. 48 on DraftKings, no. He's much cheaper on some of the Aussie sites, so he's a better play over on those ones. All right, let's look now at the second to last. I can't look at this background where these jerseys are falling down. Damn you, poor sticky stuff. San Antonio and Denver. The Spurs are favored by 7.5. The total here is 213 points. Ken Fareed is listed as questionable with his back, and Jameer Nelson and Darrell Arthur are both probable. They played in the last game. I would imagine they'll be ready to go. lots of value on the surface here for Denver, but it's San Antonio. So there's always somewhat of a concern when you look at some of this stuff that's going down with this mob. At point guard, Manny Mudiay is at 4,800. He is strictly a GPP guy. Now, the Spurs have not been... in fact, they've been a positive for opposition point guard, so oppositions, it's a slight boost. Now, Mudiay is all over the place, but in GPPs, I like him. At 4,300 on DraftKings, I really like him. I think there's significant upside for him over on DraftKings, but it's very tough to look at him in cash. Tone Parker has been good, averaging 30 over the last 3, 28 over the last 5, and he's priced at 4,600 now. I hate that price has jumped, and he's at 49 on DraftKings, so it does make him really tough to play, but the price hasn't jumped to his recent average. So if he gets 30 again, which might be a stretch, at 4,600, you've returned value. You've gotten close to 6, but is that enough to really get it cracking in a GPP? No, but I imagine his ownership would be pretty low, and the matchup is a real positive here. So I can totally see using Tone Parker getting low ownership, and maybe he returns 6.5x value. Jameer Nelson, no. Jamal Murray, no. Shooting guards, Gaz Harris, 4,700 on FanDuel and 49 on DraftKings. Solid. Not sure the upside is there, though, and the Dan Green defense matchup does worry me somewhat, so not overly keen on using him. As for Green, he's at 3,700. He is strictly a GPP type of a player. Farton Will Barton is, again, in the last 5 games, he's had a 9-point game in 24 minutes and a 42-point game in 24 minutes. He's at 4,900. He is strictly a GPP guy, but this matchup is not all that conducive to great stuff. So, clearly not cash. But yeah, look, any bloke that can go and drop a 40 or 45 is worth having a bit of a look at it in that sort of a format. Small forwards, Wilson Chandler's at 5,600. He's been putting up decent-ish numbers, 57 on DraftKings. I actually like him a bit better on DraftKings than FanDuel, but I think there's some value to use him there. I'm not overly worried about Kawhi Leonard guarding him. I think Kawhi is going to be taking guys like Harris or the Rooster most of the time, so I'm not really concerned there. So the matchup is not too much of a worry for me in that sense, but I do think Wilson can have some impact here. As for the Rooster at 6,200, been really good, but he's about to get Kawhi, so I think we can pass on the Rooster in most cases here. And we look, who's the other? Oh, of course, Kawhi. He's at 8,500. No issue here with defense in terms of stopping him. 8,500. You should be looking at comfortably 40 plus for Kawhi. So I think he's a decent guy to look at. 8,500 on DraftKings and FanDuel, as I mentioned. And probably the scoring system's not quite as conducive to him on FanDuel, but still he's worth a look. Power forward Nick Jokic, 7,100. Stay out of foul trouble, man, and he'll smash it. In fact, he's smashing it anyway. He's averaging 41 over the last 5 in 28 minutes. His ownership's going to be high. The matchup appears negative on the surface. I still think you can use him, though. I still feel pretty good about him. The problem is his ownership in GPPs is just so high that might turn you off. But in cash, the salary has not gone high enough to turn me completely away from Nikola Jokic or Nikola Jokic. LaMarcus Aldridge, ridiculous at the moment, averaging 36 in the last 3. He's at 7,700. Do we expect him to continue to shoot at 75%? I don't. So I'll be really hesitant to use him again here. Dave Lee, same story. Not because of the shooting, just because he's no good. At center, Pau Gasol, 6,400. Big man can go off against Denver, but not sure this is the greatest spot to use Pau in. Definitely no cash game reliability. Or Yusuf Nurkic, who's been really good in Kenneth Faried's absence, averaging 24 in the last 3, including 31 in the last game. At 4,100, that looks great, but if Faried plays, what minutes is Nurkic getting? There's a lot of risk involved. Maybe you look at it in a GPP, but I don't think that's going to be the best option that's out there. All right, let's talk now about the last game of the night, and it is the Los Angeles Lakers taking on the Portland Trailblazers. At this point, I'm assuming that Lillard is out when doing these discussions about the numbers. So let's no spread currently for this one. At the moment, Lillard is officially questionable, but I am assuming that he is out. Point guard, D'Angelo Russell, 6,300. He's been playing well, but that's resulted in a $300 salary rise on FanDuel. So I'm not going to be really all over him on FanDuel. On DraftKings at 6,000, yeah, I'm behind that. He's averaging 38 over the last 5. We know that Portland's defense is far from good, so real chance for him to go at least 30. 35 is definitely on the cards for D'Angelo. So really, really like that here. Other point guards. Jordan Clarkson, no. He did have a decent game last time out, but that is still a no. Shabazz Napier, also no. Let's talk shooting guards. Alan Crabb at 3,800. No interest in Crabby if Lillard plays, but obviously Crabb had a pretty impressive performance today. What did he put up? He put up... you put up a good score. Now it's completely escaped my field of vision. Oh, there it is. He scored 28 today. So at his salary, which is obviously a cheap one, 3,800, love it. So yeah, absolutely fine. And I'm not a big Crab fan, but I'm absolutely fine to use him in this scenario. And CJ McCollum at $8,000, he put up 52 today. So again, retaining value. He's been fairly impressive in these last couple of games. That's 2 straight 50-point performances for CJ at 8,000. It's going to be really tough to fade him again. Although that salary, it is fairly expensive. If we look at him over on DraftKings, he's at $9,000. So that's pushing it somewhat. That's tough. Look, he has exceeded it the last couple of games, but it is pushing it, and that might be in Russ fade territory just on DraftKings. Lou Williams, not interested at 4,900, and Lou priced over on DraftKings at the same, so nothing there. And Swaggy P at 4,700 has been playing really well and has been getting close to that number on most nights. So I think he is absolutely worth a look in certain situations. Not going to be a must-own guy by any stretch, but averaging 23 across the last 5, and at 4,700, you get me 23. I reckon you've done all right in a cash game. That's not a bad way to get some cheap players in. Mo Harkless at 4,700. If Lillard's out, I do like it. I think there's something to be said there. Same with him at 4,800 on DraftKings. Evan Turner, 4,800. I'd rather take Harkless for the $100 less. And Lou Deng has been horrendous. He is also questionable with bicep tendonitis, so it's really going to be tough to use him. If he happens to be out, we're going to see more minutes from Brandon Ingram, but that doesn't necessarily mean we need to use him. But a GPP at minimum salary for Brandon Ingram would be not advisable, but would be interesting. Power forwards. Aminu's at 4,100. Had a pretty good game today where he dropped 27.9 points. I think that Aminu is definitely worth a look, especially if Lillard's out. We know that the Lakers are fairly weak defensively, so he can put up some numbers there. So I really think he is an option, but a tougher cash sort of a play. Well, Julius Randle has risen by $400 on FanDuel. That is not ideal. He's at 7,100 on both sites now. Yes, he's coming off a 59-point triple-double, but 7,100 for Julius Randle, I'm not 100% in on that at that salary. The thing that makes me go, oh, come on, Josh, you can do it, is it's the Blazers front court. And the Blazers front court has yielded some pretty significant lines to people this season. Although, against a player like Randle, it's not necessarily the best matchup. But, yeah, he's in play. We'll leave it at that. Tom Robinson, no, he's only played a few minutes in the last game, had half a point. At center, Mason Plumlee, 6,300. Really like this for Plumlee. Did fantastically against Golden State, and the Lakers are no Golden State. So 59 on DraftKings, 63 on FanDuel. Love Plumlee here. And Tim Mozgov, does he get the 38 minutes again? Really tough to know, but at 3,600, if there's any whisper of that, then you can look at Mozgov at that cheap price and feel pretty good about him being a usable player. All right, let's talk. Well, let's not talk. Let's do picks of the day. Let's go on to FanDuel. Shelvin Mack at 38, Reggie Jackson 64, and Kemba at 81. Shawnee Kilpatrick at 44, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope at 57, and Jimmy Harden at 12,000. Small forwards, Marcus Morris 43, Paulie George 79, and Kawhi 85. Power forwards, Derek Favors 45, Thad Young 52, and Tony Davis 11-1. And the centers, the table, Montrezl Harrell 47, and Mason Plumlee 63. On DraftKings, Manny Mudiay 43, punt as I mentioned. D'Angelo 6,000 and Jimmy Harden 12,100. At shooting guard, Etuan Moore 32, DeMar DeRozan 72. Small forwards, Kent Bazemore 42, Wilson Chandler 57, and Kawhi Leonard 85. Power forwards, Derek Favors 49, Paul Millsap 74, and Anthony Davis 10,000. And the centers, Dirk is at 44 and Mason Plumlee 59. Let's talk Aussie sites now. Moneyball, Tyreek is minimum salary on Moneyball, so I think that is a definite GPP guy to have a look at. Reggie Jackson's at 53 and Kemba's at 81. Gaz Harris at 39, Oladipo 59, and DeMar DeRozan 8100. The small forwards, TJ Warren 41, Paulie George 7000, and Kawhi at 83. Power forwards, Favors 4,000, Randall 63, Tony Davis 10-2, and the centers, Tyson Chandler 43, Andre Drummond 74. Draft stars, Tony Parker 72, Reggie Jackson 92, and Kemba 15,250. Shooting guards, Uncle P at 71, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope 8750, and Jimmy Harden 23900. Small forwards, Al-Farouq Aminu 7750, Mo Harkless 8250, and Kawhi 15550. Power forwards, the table, Montrezl Harrell 59, Julius Randle 10750, and Anthony Davis 18250. Rounding it out with the centers, Johnny Lua 7950, Mason Plumlee 10550, and Andre Drummond 14,800. Alright guys, we are done. Sorry about the interruption of shit falling on my head. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Jay Crowder.